This guy died completely broke. No money, no house, no family. He spent the last 10 years of his life living alone in a New York hotel room, feeding pigeons from his window because they were the only friends he had left. But here's the thing. Every single time you flip a light switch, that's him. Every time you charge your phone, run a washing machine, turn on an air conditioner, or use literally any electrical device in your house, the system delivering that power was his idea, his design, his invention. And he got almost nothing for it. The man who invented the electrical system that powers the entire modern world died with a total net worth of approximately $0. Meanwhile, the man who stole his ideas, who took his work, repackaged it, and sold it to the world under a different name, became one of the most celebrated figures in American history, Thomas Edison. You know him. You were taught about him in school. You probably weren't taught about Nikola Tesla. And that is not an accident. Here's what makes this story genuinely insane. Tesla didn't just invent AC power, the alternating current system that won the so-called war of currents and became the global electrical standard. He invented the radio before Marconi. He invented the basis of wireless communication before anyone had a word for it. He built a working motor that engineers said was physically impossible. He demonstrated wireless energy transfer in 1899, a technology we are still trying to fully commercialize today, over 100 years later. And then he watched other people get credit for most of it while he went broke funding experiments in a Colorado field by himself. This is the actual Tesla story, not the car brand, not the meme, not the romanticized lone genius in a lightning storm. The real one, the immigrant kid who outthought every engineer in America, got systematically robbed by the people around him and still changed the world more completely than almost anyone who ever lived. Let's go. Nikola Tesla was born at exactly midnight between July 9th and July 10th, 1856, in a small Serbian village called Smiljan, which is now part of modern Croatia. The timing of his birth is one of those details that feels almost too on the nose for a man who would spend his life working with electrical currents. His mother, apparently, told the midwife that the midnight birth was a sign he would be a child at the storm. She wasn't wrong. His father was a Serbian Orthodox priest, serious man, theological, not particularly interested in science or engineering. His mother, Georgina, called Duka, was the one who mattered for what Tesla became. She was the daughter of a priest, had no formal education whatsoever, but had memorized enormous quantities of Serbian epic poetry and could recite it on demand. She also built household tools by hand, in her spare time, for fun. Tesla later said his inventive instinct came entirely from his mother. He was a strange kid by every account. Photographic memory. He could memorize entire books after reading them once. He did integral calculus in his head, which caused his teachers to repeatedly accuse him of cheating, because they couldn't believe the answers were being generated without written work. He also had what we would now recognize as obsessive-compulsive tendencies that he managed rather than hid for his entire life. He was obsessed with the number 3. He would walk around a block 3 times before entering a building. He calculated the cubic volume of his food before eating it. He couldn't touch other people's hair. He had a severe phobia of pearls. He once sent his secretary home and refused to work that day because she was wearing a pearl necklace. These aren't quirky fun facts. They're a picture of a mind that processed the world in very specific ways, and those same processing tendencies that made daily life strange were also what made him able to visualize complete, working mechanical systems entirely inside his head before building a single physical component. He once said he never built a prototype before the mental version was complete and debugged. When he finally built the physical object, it worked the first time, almost always. At 17, Tesla got cholera, badly enough that his father, who had always wanted him to enter the priesthood, promised him he could study engineering if he survived. Tesla survived. He enrolled at the Austrian Polytechnic in Graz in 1875. And that's where the obsession that would define his entire career began. In a physics class, a professor demonstrated a Grammy dynamo, an electrical machine that could work as either a motor or a generator. It ran on direct current. It sparked and stuttered when it operated. Tesla raised his hand and said the sparking could be eliminated if you used alternating current instead. The professor told him that was impossible. that anyone who claimed AC could power a motor didn't understand electricity. Tesla didn't argue. He just filed the problem away. He would spend the next 6 years solving it. Here's what you need to understand about direct current versus alternating current, because the entire Tesla story lives inside this technical argument. Direct current, DC, flows in one direction, like water through a pipe. Steady, one-way constant. Edison's entire electrical system was built on DC. It worked. It powered lights and motors and early electrical equipment just fine. The problem was distance. DC power loses enormous amounts of energy over long transmission lines. The electrons are fighting friction the entire way, and the longer the wire, the more power you lose. Edison's solution was to build power stations every mile or so, which meant cities could have electrical power, but the countryside couldn't. You had to be close to the source. Tesla's insight was that alternating current, AC, which reverses direction many times per second, could be transmitted over much longer distances with far less energy loss. Step it up to high voltage with a transformer, send it across hundreds of miles of wire, step it back down at the destination. Cheap, efficient, scalable. The problem was that nobody had built a working AC motor. The engineering consensus, and this is the professor's point, was that a motor powered by alternating current was theoretically impossible. A current that kept reversing direction would just make a motor vibrate uselessly rather than rotate. Tesla knew the consensus was wrong. He just didn't know how to prove it yet. The proof came in February 1882 in a park in Budapest. Tesla was walking with a friend, reciting Goethe from memory, watching the sunset. And then he stopped mid-sentence. He grabbed a stick and started drawing in the dirt. What he drew, right there in a Budapest park with a stick, was the complete design of the AC induction motor, the rotating magnetic field. The exact configuration of coils that would make the motor spin smoothly, without brushes, without sparking, without the problems that had made everyone think AC motors were impossible. His friend watched this happen and said Tesla was shaking, not from cold, from what he was seeing in his head. He described it later as a vision, sudden, complete, fully formed, like a photograph of something that already existed, and he was just finally seeing it clearly. The AC induction motor he sketched in that Budapest park in 1882 is still the basis of most electric motors running today. Inside your air conditioner, inside your washing machine, inside every electric vehicle that isn't directly descended from a different motor tradition. The rotating magnetic field principle Tesla drew in the dirt that afternoon is running billions of machines right now. But drawing it in the dirt and building it were two different things, and building it required resources Tesla didn't have. He needed backing. He needed a laboratory. He needed someone who understood what he was proposing and had the money to fund it. And that's how, in 1884, Nikola Tesla got on a boat to America. He arrived in New York with 4 cents in his pocket, a poem he'd written, calculations for a flying machine, and a letter of introduction. The letter was addressed to Thomas Edison. The letter Tesla carried was written by Charles Batchelor, one of Edison's top engineers in Europe, who had watched Tesla work and understood immediately that this was not an ordinary engineer. The letter reportedly said something close to, "I know 2 great men. You are one of them. This young man is the other." Edison was 37. Tesla was 28. They met in New York and Edison hired him almost immediately. Now here's where the mythology and the reality split pretty dramatically. The popular version of the Edison-Tesla relationship is a simple rivalry of equals, 2 geniuses on opposite sides of the DC versus AC debate, going head-to-head in a battle of ideas that Tesla eventually won. The reality is less balanced. When Tesla arrived at Edison's lab, he was an employee, a very good one. Edison recognized his engineering ability immediately, but still an employee. He was working for Edison, on Edison's problems, for Edison's money. And the money was a problem right from the start. Tesla spent his first months in America working on improving Edison's DC dynamos, the generators that powered Edison's electrical system. He worked extraordinary hours. 18-hour days were normal. He redesigned 24 different types of machines, improving efficiency and reliability significantly. By his own account, Edison told him early on that if he could fix the problems with the dynamo system, there was $50,000 in it for him. $50,000 in 1884 is roughly $1.5 million today. So Tesla worked. For months. He fixed the dynamos. Then he went to collect. Edison laughed. He told Tesla the $50,000 offer had been a joke. Tesla, he reportedly said, "You don't understand American humor." Now, Edison's defenders say Tesla misunderstood an offhand comment, that the $50,000 was never a real offer, that Tesla was naive about workplace banter. Maybe, but what happened next is what matters. Tesla walked out of Edison's lab and spent the next 2 years doing ditch digging. Literally, he couldn't find engineering work. He formed a company, the Tesla Electric Light Company, that his investors promptly stripped from him once he had done the technical work, leaving him with nothing but some worthless stock certificates. He dug ditches for a utility company in New York to survive. The man who had drawn the AC induction motor in the Budapest Park was digging holes in Manhattan. In 1887, he finally found backers, 2 businessmen, Alfred Brown and Charles Peck, who gave him a laboratory and funding. Within months, he had built working prototypes of all the AC electrical equipment he had been mentally designing for the better part of a decade. Motors, generators, transformers, a complete AC system. He filed for 7 patents in one day. 7. And then he gave a lecture to the American Institute of Electrical Engineers that stopped the room. In the audience was a man named George Westinghouse, and Westinghouse immediately understood what he was looking at. The war of currents was about to start. George Westinghouse showed up at Tesla's lab shortly after the lecture. He bought Tesla's AC patents for $60,000 cash plus royalties, roughly $1.8 million in today's money, and hired him as a consultant. The deal was straightforward. Westinghouse would build the AC electrical infrastructure. Tesla's patents would be the foundation. Every AC installation would pay royalties back to Tesla. On paper, it was the deal that should have made Tesla one of the wealthiest men in America. Edison's response to the Westinghouse-Tesla partnership was immediate and, by any modern standard, genuinely unhinged. He launched a public relations campaign against AC power that historians now call the War of Currents. And the centerpiece of that campaign was a strategy so dark it almost defies belief. Edison started publicly electrocuting animals, dogs, calves, in public demonstrations for newspaper reporters and photographers. The argument was that AC power was too dangerous, that the higher voltages required for long-distance transmission made it lethal in a way that Edison's DC system was not. To prove it, he and his associates used AC current from Westinghouse generators to kill animals, trying to associate the Westinghouse name with death and danger. The word Westinghouse was briefly proposed as a synonym for electrocution. Edison's team also lobbied for AC current to be used in the electric chair, the newly invented execution method New York State was adopting. The logic was deliberately cynical. If AC became associated with state executions, the public would never accept it in their homes. The first electric chair execution used a Westinghouse AC generator. The prisoner, William Kemmler, died horribly. It took 2 attempts and several minutes. The press coverage was devastating, and the newspapers covered it in exactly the terms Edison wanted: Westinghouse power kills. Tesla's response to all of this was to do something that required a truly extraordinary level of nerve. He stood in front of audiences and passed high-frequency AC current through his own body. He held a light bulb in his bare hand, and it lit up from the current running through him. He stood in the middle of artificial lightning bolts he was generating, completely unharmed, to demonstrate that his understanding of electrical current was so precise that he knew exactly how to work with it safely. It was the greatest science communication move of the 19th century. It was also insane. The actual turning point of the War of Currents came in 1893 at the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, the World's Fair. The organizers put the electrical contract out for bid. Westinghouse, using Tesla's AC system, bid half of what Edison's DC consortium bid. Westinghouse won. For the first time, the world saw what a city running on AC power looked like. Over 100,000 light bulbs, 100,000. The fairgrounds blazed at night in a way that nobody had ever seen. Crowds came from across the country just to stand in the light. It was over after that. AC won. And the payoff for Tesla should have been enormous. Remember those royalty agreements? For every AC installation, for every motor, for every generator running on his patents, Tesla was owed money. He was about to give it all away because Westinghouse came to him in the early 1890s and explained that the royalty payments were threatening to bankrupt the company, that Edison's legal attacks and the cost of building the infrastructure were draining cash, that if the royalties kept accumulating, Westinghouse might not survive. Tesla picked up the royalty contract and he tore it up. He told Westinghouse to keep the money. By the late 1890s, Tesla was the most famous scientist in America. Genuinely. He was a celebrity in the modern sense. He gave lectures that sold out. He was photographed constantly. Mark Twain came to his laboratory in Manhattan, and the photographs from those visits are among the most surreal documents of the Gilded Age. Twain and Tesla surrounded by arcing electrical equipment, looking like they'd wandered into a science fiction story. Tesla's lab on South Fifth Avenue had produced a series of inventions in the early 1890s that each, individually, should have secured his legacy permanently. The Tesla coil, a transformer circuit that generates high voltage, high-frequency alternating current, still used today in radio and television equipment and in physics demonstrations in classrooms around the world, the basis of the radio. This one gets complicated because Guglielmo Marconi gets the credit in most textbooks, and Marconi did transmit a radio signal across the Atlantic in 1901. But the patents for the fundamental radio technology, the oscillating circuit, the antenna design, the tuning mechanism, were filed by Tesla before Marconi built anything. The US Patent Office actually awarded the radio patent to Tesla in 1943, after both men were dead. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's documented patent history. The fluorescent light bulb, Tesla demonstrated it in 1893. It was commercialized by others decades later. Wireless power transmission. And this is the one that consumes him from the late 1890s onward. In 1899, Tesla moved his operation to Colorado Springs. He built an experimental station there, a large wooden structure with a copper sphere on top, and started doing experiments with the transmission of electrical power through the Earth and atmosphere without wires. What he was attempting was genuinely radical, using the Earth itself as a conductor to transmit electrical energy anywhere on the planet without a single wire. Free energy, globally available, with no infrastructure other than receiving equipment. He generated artificial lightning bolts 130 feet long. He lit 200 light bulbs wirelessly from 25 miles away. His equipment was so powerful that it knocked out the Colorado Springs power grid. He had essentially sucked all the electricity out of the local system for his experiments. The power company refused to supply him with more electricity until he repaired their equipment himself. He came back from Colorado Springs convinced that global wireless power transmission was buildable. All he needed was a large enough tower and sufficient funding. He found a funder, J.P. Morgan, one of the wealthiest men in America, who gave him $150,000 to build a global wireless communication tower on Long Island. Tesla designed Wardenclyffe Tower, 187 feet tall, a mushroom-shaped structure with a copper dome sunk deep into the earth with a root system of iron pipes, designed to transmit electrical energy through the ground and signals through the atmosphere simultaneously. Construction began in 1901, and then Marconi transmitted across the Atlantic using, in Tesla's furious words, 15 of Tesla's patents. And Morgan, reading the newspapers about Marconi's success, decided wireless communication was already solved. He cut off funding for Wardenclyffe. Tesla never finished the tower. He had already spent most of the Morgan money. He had no backup funding, and without Wardenclyffe, the entire vision of global wireless power collapsed. He never fully recovered from it. The decade after Wardenclyffe is genuinely painful to read. Tesla spent it trying to find investors for ideas that were becoming more ambitious and less commercially legible at the same time. He was proposing the World Wireless System, a global network for transmitting power and communication simultaneously. He was working on a particle beam weapon he called the Teleforce, what the press called a death ray. He was developing theories about cosmic rays and planetary energy that were moving further from conventional science. Some of these ideas were ahead of their time, some were not going to work. The problem was that by the early 1900s, Tesla had lost the ability to distinguish between the two, and the investors he was pitching couldn't tell either. He gave away or lost the patents that should have made him wealthy. He forgot to renew some of them. Legal fights over others drained his resources. The Westinghouse royalties he had torn up, which by the time of his death would have been worth tens of millions of dollars, were simply gone. He kept moving to smaller and smaller spaces. The Manhattan laboratory was replaced by a room in a hotel, then a smaller hotel, then the Hotel New Yorker, where he moved in 1933 and stayed for the rest of his life, in room 3227. Third floor, room number divisible by 3. He became reclusive, then genuinely eccentric in ways that pushed people away. He refused to eat anything that wasn't white. He became increasingly obsessed with pigeons. He would go to Bryant Park every day to feed them, and he formed a particular attachment to one white female pigeon that he described in terms that make his biographers uncomfortable, as the love of his life. In 1931, Time magazine put him on the cover for his 75th birthday. In 1943, when he died, he was essentially unknown to the general public and broke. He died on January 7, 1943, alone in room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker. A maid found him. He was 86 years old. 2 days later, the US government's Office of Alien Property seized all his papers and belongings, every notebook, every letter, every design document. They were classified. The official reason was that Tesla had claimed in his final years to have designed a weapon capable of destroying aircraft from hundreds of miles away. The government wanted those designs. Most of the seized materials were eventually transferred to the Tesla Museum in Belgrade after the Yugoslav government petitioned for them. But the seizure meant that for decades after his death, Tesla's papers were inaccessible to researchers, which contributed to how thoroughly his contributions got buried under other people's legends. The FBI maintained a file on him, a dead 86-year-old inventor. They kept the file open for years. Let's be precise about what Nikola Tesla actually gave the world, because the popular version oscillates between hagiography and dismissal, and neither is accurate. The AC induction motor is real and foundational. It's not an exaggeration to say that modern industrial civilization runs on it. Every manufacturing facility, every elevator, every pump, every compressor, every conveyor belt, the rotating magnetic field he sketched in a Budapest park in 1882 is doing the actual mechanical work of the modern world. The AC power transmission system is real. Edison's DC system could not have powered the 20th century. The infrastructure we built, the power grids, the long-distance transmission lines, the system that moves electricity from a hydroelectric dam in the mountains to a house 300 miles away, is Tesla's architecture. The radio patents are documented and legally established, regardless of what most textbooks say. The Tesla coil and its descendants are real. They're in every radio transmitter that has ever operated. The fluorescent light principle is real. Wireless power transmission is real. It's just incomplete. We can do it over short distances. The global system he envisioned is still an active area of research. Companies today are trying to build exactly what Tesla was attempting at Wardenclyffe, using technologies he didn't have access to. What he didn't build a working death ray. He didn't unlock free energy for all mankind. He didn't discover a secret unified theory of the universe, despite what a significant corner of the internet believes. Some of his late career ideas were genuinely wrong or unprovable. He was a human engineer, not an oracle. The gap between what Tesla actually did, which is extraordinary, and what the Tesla mythology claims he did, is worth understanding, because the mythology, ironically, makes it easier to dismiss him. When you attach impossible claims to a real person, the real achievements get tainted by association. What he actually did is enough, more than enough. He built the electrical backbone of the modern world. He did it as an immigrant, working in a second language, largely without institutional support, in direct competition with one of the most powerful and well-funded industrialists in American history. And he died broke and alone in a hotel room, surrounded by notebooks full of ideas we're still working through. So, Here's where we end up. A kid from a Serbian village who memorized books whole and did calculus in his head, who drew the future of electrical engineering in the dirt of a Budapest park with a stick, who sailed to America with 4 cents, got exploited by the most famous inventor in the country, dug ditches to survive, and then came back and built the system that powers the entire modern world, and then gave away the royalties and watched someone else get credit for the radio, and ran out of money trying to give humanity free wireless power, and died alone. When you step back and look at the full picture, the Tesla story is really a story about what the world does with a certain kind of genius, the kind that moves too fast, asks for too little, and trusts too much. Edison was a better businessman than Tesla. That's not a criticism. It's just true. Edison understood how to protect his ideas, how to build organizations around them, how to commercialize invention. Tesla understood how to invent. In a market economy, the first skill generates more wealth than the second. But here's the thing. In the long run, and we're now 130 years out from the war of currents, it's Tesla's system that runs the world. Edison's DC architecture is gone. Tesla's AC infrastructure is everywhere. The man who died with nothing built more than the man who died rich. That doesn't make the poverty okay. It doesn't make the exploitation romantic. It just means the accounting, when you run it across the full span of time, comes out differently than it did in room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker on January 7th, 1943. He gave the world the light. The world was not particularly kind to him in return. Whether that trade was worth it, for him, for us, for the civilization running on his ideas, is a question worth sitting with.